Galimera, Galispera, Galinichta, no matter where in the world you might be. Thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. Oof. When are we going to learn how to play football away from home in Europe? Here's the good news. We have a mind of football to help us mine our way through what happened tonight. Ex-Luton Town manager Paul Buckle takes us into the dressing room and beyond the white lines. Stay calm, everyone. Here we go.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
I put my swag on tonight. I had my European swag ready, and here we are. Welcome, Gunners. Wasn't the perfect evening in Europe again, but here to help me break it down is one of your favorites. Welcome back to the show, Squad Central favorite, Mr. Paul Buckle, ex-Luton Town manager, and football brain that I love, as Super Kev would do. How you doing, Paul?
I'm well, Soph. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Not too bad at all. I say that loosely right now. I mean, there's a lot going on, but yeah, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all in terms of just, Premier League Arsenal, great. European Arsenal, not so great. I can't lose my manners though here, Paul, because Super Kev would be welcoming to the squaddies. At ease, everyone, at ease. And firstly, I just wanted to start off by thank you, Chief Like Officer, welcoming Paul. I know how much you guys love him and you love his take on everything. Galispera, good evening to all of the squaddies this evening. And Paul, I wanted to start by saying thanks for joining me. I've got so many good wingmen and wingwomen who are going to help me get through the next few weeks here on the show. And I know that you and Super Kev go way back. So just wanted to say thank you for joining me. And I know how much you love and adore him as well.
Thanks, Soph. No, it was a big shock. When you told Rebecca and I about Kev, really, really shocked. But, if anyone can get through this type of thing, it's Super Kev. It's not called Super Kev for nothing. We just want to give him all our love, him and his family at this moment. Our thoughts are really with him.
Thank you so much, Paul. You and Rebecca are epic humans, and the squaddies adore Rebecca as well. And I know we'll get her on the show soon. Everyone's been asking for her. So, we'll get Bex on soon. We've saved her the agony of the Palace game. So, but we'll get one of our favorites back as well. Good evening. Already almost 150 of you here in live chat. Here's how I want to do this tonight. And this is why I wanted Paul on as well, because it's very easy to come in here and rip players and give player ratings and do all that stuff. But what I love about what Paul does and taking us into the mind of the manager and the dressing room is understanding the nuances of the game and also how a game evolves, and maybe even a little bit further back from that in terms of how a team prepares for a game like this. But what I wanted to start off with, Paul, is were we poor tonight, or did Porto play a superb tactical game?
I think they did. I think that when you're doing as well as Arsenal are right now, everyone raises their game. That's the first thing I would say. It doesn't matter what level of football you're playing. If you're on top of your game like Arsenal are right now, scoring the goals they're scoring, the first thing you would be hoping is for all your players to be, 7, 8 out of 10. So, and I think they were. I think they restricted Arsenal, that low block, 4-5-1. It's really tough to break down. But I think, I couldn't see them scoring. And that was a shock. I mean, I'd literally just walked away from the TV and Teddy was like, oh, no. So, and I saw the goal, which I think they'll be disappointed with the goal. You always are. But if it's a great goal, And I'm not taking anything away from the strike, but I think that's preventable, to be honest. And I'm sure Mikel will feel the same when he looks at that. 0-0 would have been great. I still think Arsenal will do it. But yeah, I mean, it just changes everything, doesn't it? I mean, that's the highs and lows for fans and players, managers. But as speaking from a manager's standpoint, when you can't see a goal coming from the opposition, so like you keep it the same. You don't normally need to change it. And that goal right at the end is a killer. But Arsenal, I'm sure, will take a lot of strength from the way they've been of late in the Premier League.
So I've left this comment up from Seb for you, Paul, because he's saying Raya can run and swim back to London for that mistake. You could also maybe criticise some of the players in that build-up play, Martinelli. But when we last spoke with you and Sophie Nicolaou, the Liverpool legend, on the show, you still had some concerns about Raya. And it's really weird because on Monday I gave him some flowers and said that, in hindsight, you look at, I don't like how Mikel Arteta made the decision about the goalkeepers, but his record right now and the clean sheets speak for themselves. This morning I was talking to my cousin and saying, is it because of him or is it because of the defence and how our midfield have also controlled games? You had some doubt still whether or not that was the right decision. As a manager, you're going into the dressing room at this point. Are you thinking your goalkeeper was way off his line there for that point in the game? I think we've lost Paul's sound. Put it on portrait, Paul, if it's easier for you, mate. Put it on. Can you hear me? I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. Yeah. I can't hear you. Go back out and come back in. Yeah, so I don't know if that was a mistake by Raya or what happened. What happened there? But we're going to try. Paul, can you hear me now? We'll get Paul back, and we'll get his take on stuff in just a second. Let's see. I think Porto realized Raya's positioning. He kept coming out, and they just went for it. It does seem like that. It's a beautiful night. Come on, you Spurs. Look at the Spurs fans joining us this evening. I bet you're enjoying watching European football when you're not playing in it. Yeah, that's just like Arsenal as well. If you're going to have a particularly bad match, first leg in a knockout is probably the best time to do it. Only one goal in it. I do agree. I don't think that it is a total disaster as yet, folks. Let's bring Paul back in here. Hey, Paul, can you hear me now? Having a bit of a tech diff. Let me just text Paul, tell him to go out and come back in again. Go out and come back in. There we go. So let's see. Let's get some of your comments. Do you think this really... Are we that weak sauce, Chief Like Officer, that a yellow card in the opening couple of minutes hindered us from playing a good game? I do think it hindered Declan Rice and his mental engagement in terms of challenging and playing the way he usually plays. But I don't think that should hinder the rest of the team. I think it's a little bit bigger than that. Let's bring Paul back in. Hey, Paul. Still can't hear you. All right, let's get some of your comments up here. Porto had a lot of discipline. We looked leggy and out of ideas. I totally agree with that. They played a great game. What a pathetic performance. What the hell happened in the midfield and the front three? Well, I don't blame the front three because the midfield had no control of the game, which exposed the back line. And also, Porto deserve a ton of credit for how they played their low block. They gave us nothing in that first half. And I know people say, "Oh, well, we had possession." What? Passing the ball back between Rice and Havertz and Saliba and Kivior. You know, I just don't think that's the case. I think that we came into this and we had high expectations. I sent a note to my cousin this morning saying, "Are we being a little overconfident? Are we forgetting about our lack of prowess away from Europe?" Now, look, it's not over. There's no doubt that we can smash them at home. They're going to park the bus. Now they've got the goal. They're going to park the spaceship. Paul, can you hear me now? Still can't hear you. Can't hear Paul. Which is a bit of a shame because the way I wanted to get stuck into stuff tonight with him from a tactical point of view and in terms of the decisions that Mikel Arteta made, this is how I felt a little bit. Where's Seb's comment? Diego Simeone tactics from Porto, not from us, of course. Porto played the low block and made it difficult for us to go wide. Lucas says Arsenal's lack of experience in the Champions League showed especially at the end of the game. It really did. And I'm not being funny. This Pepe thing, yeah, the guy's 41 years old. It's crazy. I got sick and tired of hearing that on the broadcast, if I'm being honest. Paul, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
Epic. We got Paul back. All right, awesome. So, Paul, let's get stuck into it. Arsenal's prowess in Europe is really devoid of any pedigree since the George Graham days. Yeah, we got to the Champions League final against Barcelona. We got to the semi-final of the Europa League recently with Mikel Arteta. We got to the final of the Europa League with Unai Emery. However, we've not been able to close the deal. Now, as an Arsenal fan, I'm not panicking totally tonight because I feel that at 1-0, taking it home, we can smash them 4-1. We can smash them 3-1. However, now with that 1-0 lead, that European-style defensive, parking the spaceship, parking the bus comes into play. What do you think ultimately went wrong for Arsenal tonight?
Well, like I said, Porto played well, Sophie. You know, it's not easy to break that block down. I think moving the ball quicker, I think keeping the tempo. I mean, I'm not sure what the game plan was to keep it tight themselves, you know, and not be disappointed with 0-0, which it should have been, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe just not being as attack-minded as we've seen, and as ambitious. But, you know, it's not easy in Europe. You know, you get used to the Premier League teams and the way they play and knowing the players. It's different when you come up against this type of opposition. Okay, and they're very good at what they do. You know, very disciplined, very good. And as I said, we're on top of their game. They needed to be on top of their game defensively, and they were waiting for either a lapse in concentration from Arsenal, a mistake, you know, or a great goal, which they'll see it as a great goal. And like I said, I do think Raya was at fault. You know, straight away as a former player and manager, immediately as a goal goes in, you can see it takes me a few seconds to think he should have had it. He shouldn't have had it. No chance. Great goal. I was like, oh, whoa, he's in the wrong position. Too far off the line, and he went with the wrong hand. So, you know, he should have gone with the left hand. It's the furthest one, right? But I don't even think he'd have got it with the left hand. He went with the right hand. He was beaten. The minute the ball went, he was beaten. And you would say, away from home, you'd let him strike it, but it wasn't whipped with a load of pace. I don't think it ended up in the stanchion. You know, I don't even think Declan Rice is thinking there's a lot, you know, of problems there at that moment, you know. And yeah, I mean, now it's all to play for, but it could, you know, it could end up being a blessing in disguise. So and I think it'll, you know, when they get them at home, it'll kick Arsenal into gear, big time.
So let me ask you this: your managerial mind, because I wanted to put this up from Frankie. This is on the manager. We played with too much caution. When I've said this to Kev before, he said to me, "No, no, no. You know, once they cross the white lines, it's down to the players." So I say to Kev, well, hold on a second. Is he passing it this way and that way because the manager has told him of, you know, we're playing more of a possession based game this season. But in terms of caution, has Mikel Arteta, when we're just thinking he's becoming a little bit more experienced in the Premier League tonight, have we seen his naivety in Europe? As a manager, do you tell your players to play cautious? Do you think that's what's happened tonight?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, it's half time, right? It's not, you know, it's a different game. It's not a one-off. And maybe he'll learn from it tonight. I mean, we don't know what he's told the players. I was saying to you before the show, you know, about, you know, I predicted Arsenal will win the league last time, and they're scoring a load of goals. And I think they might have gone against them in terms of the way they defended against Arsenal. And this could be, you know, there could be a lot more of this now. You know, the minute they're starting to really put the goals in and, you know, been destroying teams, this is what can happen. Maybe he was too cautious. But then, you know, on the flip side, it is half time, and I still think they'll go through. That's the main objective for him and the club. And I really think that it's not the end of the world. I don't think it's the end of the world at all. I just don't think that goal should have gone in. I think that was preventable. And as a manager, you can't do nothing about that. What would we be saying tonight if it was 0-0? He'd be saying Arsenal showed resilience. We've been sensible. We've not gone gung-ho. We've, you know, kept it tight. And they did. They did. It's just a strike from what? 20 odd yards out that I think he'll expect the keeper to save it.
Yeah, he was way off his line. Here's a question for you from Lucas. Paul, what will Arteta be saying to the players after the final whistle?
I think he'll be saying, no problem. No problem. You've been fantastic, you know, which they have. They have been in brilliant form. And then we've got another chance. We've got another chance. And I think he'll be, you know, with the games coming so quickly, you've got to be very careful you don't overreact sometimes. You know, the players have given everything. The players were 30 seconds from a really good draw. You can't all of a sudden undo everything that's been done defensively because of that strike. You can't. And you're not going to be able to score 2 and 3 goals every game. So I think he'll be calm. I think, again, it's another great test for him, Sophie, isn't it? As a manager, to be going through that patch they're going through, flying, and probably in that game not seeing that goal coming, and then all of a sudden your emotions, you know, your heart sinks when that ball hits the back of the net. But he'll have a lot of trust in that team. He'll have an awful lot of trust in the team. It's just whether he decides, you know, to make any type of changes. I think the continuity has helped them with the team for sure. You know, the players. But I really don't think he'll worry too much.
Demsek wants to know, Paul, what does Arteta goalkeeper coach say to Raya?
After that?
Yeah. What would you do, Paul? I mean, what would Arteta do? What would you do? What does a manager do in a situation like that?
Well, all managers would be different, but you know, when you're in the professional game, you've got to be accountable. You know, if you're doing brilliantly, you expect people to tell you, and if you're not doing so well, I would expect to be told. As a player, I was told, and because you know it's fine margins, and like I said, you know, I love Arsenal's goalkeepers. I'm a fan of Rad, but that he's got to save that. He can't be beaten from there like that. It didn't look right. The positioning was wrong. I don't know what the goalkeeping coach is going to tell him. I know what I'd like my goalkeeping coach to say. I mean, I've worked with lots of goalkeeping coaches, and sometimes you can, get into heated discussions with them. We know about the goalkeepers union, but the expectation would have been for them to save that. You would hope that the goalkeeper holds his hands up immediately, because you can move on from that then. And then you have a decision like it with every position on the field, whether you think it's time for a change. It's like a player letting a runner go from midfield, right? You lose your man, you let your... when I was playing, if someone ran off the back of me, which I'm willing, they didn't that too often, you're worried for the next game, because if there's someone waiting to take your place and you make that error and you cost the team, you can have no qualms really. If you've earned some, if you've been playing really well, sometimes you'll get away with it. But when it's glaringly obvious that you've made a mistake that's cost the team, you have a decision to make then as a manager when you're looking at that. So I think it was a poor goal, and it's just how he looks at that as a manager. But I would expect the goalkeeping coach to look at Mikel and say we should have done better there.
So, Paul, on Monday's show, I was talking about how in the Premier League, we've found a way to cope and perhaps not even missed over the last few games Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu Partey. Two players I want to focus on a little bit more because of their European experience is Jesus and Zinchenko. The Premier League and Europe are totally different. And Mikel's learning his way, and some of these players are learning their way too. Do you think this game tonight is exactly an example, maybe to come back to me and say, well, I get what you're saying about the Premier League, Soph, but in Europe tonight, Arsenal missed the intricate passing of Zinchenko and the movement of Gabriel off the ball?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question. It's like horses for courses. A lot of the experienced managers would change from their Premier League team. I always remember I had a brilliant chat with Sir Alex Ferguson once back in the day, and he said to me that he never named the Premier League team until the day of the game. So I think I shared this before. He never named the team because he wanted to keep, his philosophy was to keep everyone alive, thinking they got a chance of playing right up to 1:45 on a Saturday. But in Champions League, he would name it as soon as he could, so they could work on the training field because they don't know the opposition. So even sort of like looking at that, it's very different, in Europe to what it is in Premier League. And again, whether Mikel's got the air miles to sort of think that way, or there's dangers of changing it when it's going so well, right? So there's another thing there where if you make the changes, you then think, well, it goes wrong. You've got yourself into a mess unnecessarily. If that makes sense. So, yeah, I think that's an experience thing, really. When you sort of start to look at Europe and say, well, really analyse it and say these players are the right players, and that's showing a lot of trust in your squad as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I think in the Premier League, it's easy to say, why change it, right? But in Europe, and I love that you brought up the Sir Alex Ferguson thing again, because I love that. I love the stories from your conversations with him, especially. And that's an experienced manager knowing that you have to mix it up a little bit. And I want to put Ringer's comment up here. Huge difference in manager abilities tonight. Can't be bothered that we lost, but I can be bothered that we had 0 shots on goal tonight. Doesn't make me optimistic at all. Do you think there was a huge difference in managerial abilities tonight, Paul? Do you think Mikel got out-coached in Europe again?
I don't think he got out. I wouldn't say he got out coached. Like I've said there, I don't think the result's the end of the world. That's first and foremost. So that's where I'm coming from in my mind. I'm not thinking that it's the end of the world because there's another game. So I think they took the middle of the field away. I think they, Arsenal needed more from the outsides. And I was chatting with Bex because I was saying, like, you know, she watches a lot of Premier League, and I was saying about, you know, the wide men for Arsenal coming inside. They come inside all the time, you know, and because, you know, that's when you want your fullbacks to bomb on, right?
Mm-hmm.
You that's when, you know, you're really, when you get into Europe and you're getting near the latter stages, you're seeing the complete teams that are doing, the ones that are doing really well, really complete. And I think Arsenal lacked a little bit on the outsides tonight, was
Mm-hmm.
where they needed to sort of maybe change their game plan and their route to goal, in terms of being more threatening there, because that's where the spaces were. But they did defend really well,
They
Porto.
did.
They really did. And like I said, when a team is playing a low block and a team is sitting in there like they are and paying you that respect, it's just not easy. It's just not that easy away from home, you know, against that style of play. It's not that easy to actually break it down. But I do think the outsides of the field was where Arsenal could have done better.
Let me put this one up for you because I want to follow on from the comment about Sir Alex Ferguson and something that Arteta has been criticised about in the Premier League. And maybe it's because he's had a lack of a bench and he loves like a starting 11. He likes to grind and get everything he can, squeeze every ounce, Paul, out of those Premier players. Is there really, in Amir's comment here, Arteta was scared to make a change, players were tired. Was he scared to make a change? Take us into the mind of a manager. Let's like it's a really tough game.
Yeah.
They've really prepared well. You can't break their low block. Your players have played a lot of football. Rice is on a yellow card. You've got someone like Jorginho on the bench that might be able to unlock a pass, especially without Zinchenko playing that inverted role. Is he scared or does he feel like he doesn't trust his bench? What's your take on that?
I think he would have had a obviously plan A, then B and C, right? Maybe more plans of being ahead, being behind, being the main ones. When it's 0-0, it's not as easy because as the game unfolds, you start maybe in your mind saying we'll take a draw. Right? It's not the end of the world. It's a good result, you know, and you're not getting too far ahead of yourself. If you can see that the opposition are weakening, okay, and you're starting to create or you're making openings, but you're not finishing, you might change your striker, right? Because he's the one that's missed a few chances. I think it's delicate. When the game was in the balance like it was, I think sometimes, you know, stick or twist, he's just stuck and thought, you know, we'll see this out. We don't need to win the game. Maybe he didn't feel he needed to win it and he weren't going to lose it. And, you know, and then that happens. It's like, you know, it's like when you're 2-0 up at half time, do you go all out to get the third and kill them off? You make them changes as a manager? Or do you say, right, no, we'll sit and we'll see this out? We'll see it out with the same personnel. We might change the personnel and change to a 5 if it's been a 4. You know, they're the dilemmas for a manager. That's what you get paid for. But ultimately, it's the result at the end. I mean, we'll look at the performance. And like I said, if it had finished 0-0, you know, what would our conversation have looked like tonight? And that's the fine line. So that's where, as a manager, you've got to be able to keep, you know, put it into perspective.
Runs with cows. Good question, Sophie. As an armchair manager, I was all out of ideas. Well, thank you. Here's one for you as well, because there's a question here, Paul, which I find really interesting. Guna Greg, preserved energy for Newcastle. I know, you know, you've managed and you've got a lot of games. There was the time where you're playing high stakes playoffs, you know, to get promotion, big games coming up. Is he really think Champions League is kind of like the Holy Grail that other, you know, opposing fans kind of have that baton to bash us with, like our lack of pedigree and prowess in Europe? And, you know, Chelsea fans, Man United fans, Liverpool fans. is he not, as a manager, are you thinking of the now? Of course, you've got one eye on Newcastle, but this opportunity here in Europe this season, you've got, a Bayern Munich side that's struggling. You've got a Juventus side that's AWOL, PSG side that is in a bit of turmoil. Of course, Real Madrid have the pedigree and Carlo Ancelotti. They're always going to be great. Manchester City, this is their time to hit the ground running. Has he got too much of an eye on the Premier League? Is that the prize, do you think?
I do think it's a prize. Absolutely. It'd be interesting to ask the Arsenal fans what they thought of, what is priority. Is it Premier League or Champions League? And I do think that management has changed in the sense that if I look back, I never liked looking further than the next game. The game that was in front of you was the one I really, and I've spoken to a few managers since, and I've worked with a manager that was pretty good at looking at the next game. Actually, I found that quite interesting. Would sort of shuffle the pack, and it's how you deliver that. It's how you deliver that. That's how you keep the players on board with it. Your why as to why you're doing it. I still think I still wouldn't do it myself, if I'm honest. But I do get it. I do get now with the games and with the information you get now with the loads of the players, and the managers are looking ahead to the next game and preparing. And I would think he's definitely one of those managers. I don't know, obviously. I'm just guessing, but I would think he would have had one eye on the Newcastle game for sure, looking at it. They'd have looked at the timing between the games of recovery. But when you're flying, you're flying. And I think that confidence, I don't think he would have thought for 1 minute that they would lose the game. So if I think he thought they'd get a result for sure.
Yeah. I totally believe in what you're saying, Paul, because it felt that way to me. I said to Tony, this game's finishing 0-0, and we're happy to get out of there with a 0-0 and get a result at home. And Matthew's saying, despite all of this, it came down to a guy having a pop, nothing else. And that's kind of like how it felt that way at the end. Let's get to more of your questions. There's a good one here from Seb. I want to get this one in. Where is it? It's probably down here towards the end. Seb, how do you tackle a second leg 1-0 down? Do you ask for more media to make it a bigger deal, rest players, key players, and train harder than the ones who are struggling? What are you doing, Paul? We're 1-0 down. I think there's no panic. I'm not panicking. I'm just disappointed because I felt that we conceded a goal out of, like you said, a mistake. We could have walked out of there 0-0. How are you handling the second leg, knowing that they are going to park the spaceship?
I'm thinking back. I've been involved in a lot of semi-finals. So if in the playoffs, and I think one I've done all right in the semi-finals. It was the finals that I got beaten.
Painful.
Really painful. Yeah, 3 out of 4. But them semi-finals, them 2 legs are so interesting, and I think it's hard when you're ahead. I think it's easier when you are behind.
Wow.
Because the arousal levels are there straight away for the players, right? You have not got, you're 1 down. You got to score if you want to do anything. You got to score. So that's a positive. That's a real positive for a manager to have. And I've been, going somewhere like Wrexham with Luton, we were 2-0 up, and it's hard. It's a hard dilemma. Again, what do you?
I think when you get a voice note, Paul, I can't hear you. We lost you again. When you're getting a note on your phone, you lose. You got to go out and come back in. I've done the same when I was in Cyprus. I was on my phone doing the shows, and when I get a WhatsApp or a message on my phone, I've got to go out and come back in. Yeah, so let's see. Let's get this question up. Hello, Mohammed. Good to see you in live chat as well. Should have more players back for the second leg. 0 shots on target, embarrassing, definitely. Sucker punched again, 100%. Over 200 of you in live chat. Hit that like button if you like what you're hearing. I agree, it was a disappointing game. Let's start this this game, and it was I think what I said to my cousin this morning, Paul, was that we were maybe a little bit overconfident, and we perhaps came into this with our Premier League form in our minds versus the Champions League and playing in Europe. Paul. Yeah, he's got to go out and come back in. When you're doing the show, here's technology, right? As a podcaster as well. So when you're on your phone and you're doing a show, if someone texts you or WhatsApps you, you lose sound. I don't know why, but it's very difficult. Try do not disturb, says Demsek. Well done. Let's mark these questions for Paul. He'll be right back in as well. And I was really just not expecting too much tonight, so I'm not that disappointed, if I'm being honest. I was speaking to my cousin George about it this morning, and I said to him that, this European lack of pedigree worries me. Paul, you want to finish your thought there on your last, the last moment there? Yeah. Having a little bit of a tech issue, but we'll carry on here. Chris says the disappointment is hard, but we'll figure it out at home. I don't read anything into this result other than it'll be a motivation for the squad to go to another level. Jean Rene says, I just saw the goal again. For me, Martinelli is at fault at first, and I think Raya and Rice could have done better for the goal. The ref was awful, but let's not blame the referee for losing this game, right? It's not the referee blew for everything, and it was exceptionally frustrating, and definitely something that I think frustrated our team as well. But at the end of the day, you still have 90 plus minutes of football to make a difference, and we didn't make a difference tonight. Paul, can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
All right, cool. Yeah, if you put your phone on do not disturb, when the message that happened to me with Kev, and Kev had to talk for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I see now. When you get messages on your phone. But let me get some of these questions in for you from some of the listeners, because there's some couple good ones there. Right, from Wesbird here. Is Arteta still not proactive enough with his subs? And I do think that he thought it would be a 0-0 without us using too much energy and maybe getting away with one, but it backfired. What do you think about that?
Really, really interesting. Again, I know I've mentioned Pep Guardiola a lot, so right with. I think there's similarities. I don't see. I like to. Personally, things are not going right. I think you're on the side. Your job is to make the changes. Right. You've got the squad at your disposal, and I agree. I think there is moments in games where you make the changes. Right. To try and win it, or whatever you're trying to do. But Pep very rarely makes subs. And I think maybe there's something in that Mikel likes, understands, more importantly, that he doesn't want to disrupt it, that he gives the players the opportunity in the game. But I do think, sometimes it's, you spot that, you think, right, this needs to change now, or especially if you feel there's a goal coming or you can get a goal, you start to see the pictures emerge in front of you when you're sitting on the side. I think that can be frustrating for players that can see it, and I would imagine fans with that question that, it's crying out for so-and-so, it's crying out for this, let's change it, rather than just thinking it's going to keep happening when it hasn't on 60 minutes. I mean, 60 minutes is the one where you'll see the majority of managers making the changes, maybe because they think 60 minutes is a good opportunity, a good number for a player to, achieve the objectives that were set for the game.
Here's one from Mohammed from Palestine. Question for Soph and the guest. Do you see that we are paying the price for choosing Raya over Ramsdale? The goal is his fault. Every big test and game we suffer with Raya mistakes. Now, the Man City game earlier on in the season, there were a couple of instances. I was talking about how I've on Monday, Paul, how I credited him because, he's come in, he's got good stats. But has he really been tested over the last few matches? Because our defense have been so brilliant and our midfield have controlled games. What's your answer to Mohammed here?
Well, I'd probably give him the kiss of death because, again, me and Rebecca were travelling and had the game on. And I said, the rare things, the conversation seemed to have,
subsided.
Yeah, faded. I just look at tonight's game, Sophie, and again, I've said it, I'll praise it when it's praised. That's what we see. We make opinions, and I make professional opinions on it. It's a really disappointing goal. And so, it just stops there for me. And if you're going to be fair, and if you're going to say, okay, that I've got two great goalkeepers, which I have before, I've had it a lot, actually. I've actually welcomed it. I think I said this before. You'd make a change. You make the change. I think it was against Brentford, wasn't it, when Aaron came in, and it's a positive, wasn't it? Maybe it's time, because he's in now, Raya's in now, isn't he? He's had long enough now. He's part of it now, big part of it. And like I say, that's on him, that the goal's on him. And maybe it is time to make the change.
Paul, can you talk to me a little bit about height? Okay, because one of our listeners here says Ramsdale could have pulled out a Spider-Man save for that.
Yep.
It felt like he was just inches, right? Inches. Now, whether Ramsdale would have been off his line or not, that's a whole other thing. But height, do you think height came into that? I don't want to pick on, I'm not picking on him for his height, but.
No. Well, if you haven't got the height, you wouldn't be stood where he was stood. I'm sort of like thinking like a manager, because that would have annoyed me. I'm not going to lie. I would have been not happy at all.
Yeah, give us. I love it, because when we talk on the phone, you give it to me straight and stuff. And are you raging about this?
I would have been raging with that. Yeah, I would have been. I always liked, bigger keepers, if I'm honest. I did, for obvious reasons, and I like the goalkeepers to be a goalkeeper, keep goal. And that's on crosses and everything. I know the game's changed with goalkeepers coming for everything now, but if you keep goal, does that go in if he's 3 yards back on his line? It's not. You only come off. Look, I'm no goalkeeping coach, but I know enough that if that guy's coming in on goal clean, you come and narrow an angle, right? You come off and you close the space. There was no need to be that far off. I think it's either concentration, but going back to the height, you would know that. Maybe it's something they saw. Maybe it's something they saw in their preparation for the game. Like I've said before about, an opportunity to put the ball in on him on corners, right? Because he's not going to come and take things really clean, because he's not physically big either. So,
Why was it, like Jonathan asked, why was he so far off his line there?
I have no idea. There's no.
Would you ask him that? Would you be saying to him now, what the F? Like, why were you so far off your line?
Oh yeah, I would have been. I wouldn't have been happy at all. I'd have probably said that to the goalie coach, and any goalie coaches work with me, they probably don't like me, but so be it. So be it.
But would you have blamed the outfield players as well, Paul? Would you have said, with the same token with Raya, who was put in a difficult position by Martinelli and maybe even Declan Rice at that point?
No, immediately, Rice doesn't think he can beat the goalie from there. That's why Rice isn't all over him. It's an area of the pitch. Yeah, you can say Declan Rice can be closer, right? But Rice is probably thinking he's not going to beat the keeper from here. He's not even running onto it. He's sort of got the ball underneath him. He's just shifted it to the side, and then he's bent it. I mean, he's curled it in. So it's not coming with a load of pace. Rice is just holding him up.
It felt like a cross, to be honest with you, but
it's on the keeper, and for me, the minute you can clear it up, right, you can move on. So I'd love to know what they're saying in there, and I'd have just looked straight across to, whichever goalie coach I was working with at the time, they should have had that. You know immediately, because you've seen shots from that area a million times as a player, as a coach, as a manager, and expectation is there for him to absolutely save that. I think Ramsdale would have saved it. I really do. I don't think that beats him from there.
Well, let me pause on Guna Rose's question here, because Wesbird says, does Paul believe that Raya has the presence of Ramsdale, and although his distribution is very good at times, he really has made the impact, has he made the impact that deserved Ramsdale to be dropped? I think Paul's made it clear on our show. Just wanted to put that comment up because Paul said that he didn't think that was, he wouldn't have made that decision, and he would have kept Ramsdale in goal, and he hasn't been super impressed with Raya, and perhaps some of his thoughts have been backed up. Let's go to this question, because I like this, from Guna Rose. The first yellow card given out to Declan, do you think that set the tempo for the game? Porto dropping to the floor, dark arts at its finest. We talk a lot about dark arts and how Arsenal have lacked it. We've been spineless, we've been weak sauce, and with Benjamin White in the team and a couple of other players, we've been able to kind of maybe not say we haven't mastered the dark arts at all. As a manager, do you talk to your players with the dark arts, about the dark arts, and what do you think about that first yellow card? I thought it hindered Declan, but I don't think that should have hindered the team.
You mean, you mean like when the player's going down and trying to get someone booked?
Yeah. And just doing a little bit off the ball when the ref's not looking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think foreign teams are good at it. I think it's part of the game. I think it's just boxing clever, being smart. There's ways to have different ways to have success in a game, and that's, that is part of it. It's part of the game. I mean, there's less of it now because of VAR can spot stuff, right? More, and now especially with penalty decisions or big decisions, but I just think that's becoming streetwise. And that's, again, maturity of a team, the individual, game management. And again, sometimes if someone's got a chance of, getting a player set off, I've said before to teams that, we know what he's going to be like. He'll rear up. If they're on a yellow card, they're on thin ice. So, if they get anywhere around the box and someone catches you, go down. That's part of the game. Yeah, that's part of the game. I mean, it is something you do talk about when you're playing against different teams, and it's all part of the tactical approach.
Lucas wants to follow up with Paul. Would you have wanted Rice to bring down the player, or would you have preferred letting the player get the shot away? I personally think the players should have gone for the corner flag. What's your thought on that?
On the goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Again, if you look at Rice, Rice is a massive insurance policy for Arsenal. I mean, he snuffs out so much stuff, and he did it again tonight. There's a cross first half that he come across and blocked. He spots danger really well. That's one of his biggest strengths. He's there thinking there's no danger. He's thinking, there's no danger there. That's what I think he's thinking. Can he get tighter? Yes. Can he work harder to be more in line with the ball? Yes. But the guy's really like just curling it around him, if you like. The only thing I could aim at Rice is, maybe a yard closer. He might not have took the shot on. He might have, kidded him to shoot and chop back. But I still believe in that position. And I think it's backed up by the fact I think the keeper should save it. And I've played in midfield. I've played in that role there. And when someone's got, when you got to get really tight, and when You know, maybe the next step would have been to get tight if he comes another couple of yards forward.
Mm-hmm.
But Declan's probably thinking he's not going to shoot here. You know, we've got this, and from the angle as well that he was on.
Yeah. It's a tough one, because then also, guys, if Declan brings him down, he gets a yellow. That's it. You know, he's on 2 yellows. He gets a red, and he's off. Let's get this one out there for Paul. Let me see. Why only the one sub when we looked so poor all game? Why do managers do this? Kills fans.
Yeah.
Do you trust your bench when you only bring on one sub, when also nothing's really happening in the game, Paul?
We're all different managers, and I've said before, I've used the word stubborn before. I like to change it. I changed it. I'm not to make it about me. I changed it at Oxford after 20 minutes once away from home, and my assistant was like, "You're making the change now?" I was like, "Yeah, I didn't always agree with that the 60-minute one myself." So if you know, my expectation was the players to go out and do the business, right? I know you need 10 minutes to get into the game, but after that, come on, you know, you're judging them on the performance. And as a manager, I don't care what anyone says. The other players are looking. Then players that have not been selected are watching the players in their position, right, to see how they're doing, right? Because they're probably underneath hoping that they don't do so well at times, because it's the only way they're going to get on and get a chance. It's a human thing. It's just a competitive thing that's in players. So when you don't make them changes, you're not only frustrating the fans, you're frustrating the players. You know, all right, you trust the one that's on there, but the one that's sitting there. And I've been on the bench, you know, before, and saying, you know, come on, any chance, you know, how much longer have I got to sit here for? Because, you know, if a player can come on and is in the right frame of mind to come and make a difference, and when you're the Arsenal have been winning like they have, you're just waiting for moments to then get on there, and that's how you get a really competitive squad. So if I think that's how you really can get the players competing with each other, you know, and players knowing that if you're not doing it, you're running the risk to come off because we're not waiting. So maybe the waiting is frustrating and maybe costing Arsenal here and there.
Yeah, because I'm summarizing. There's a lot of questions that have come in for you about Nketiah and Nelson. Of course, you know, some fans, it's like, okay, you've been bitching about Nketiah, now you want him to play. But they're talking about giving them you give players new contracts to add value if you want to sell them. But why doesn't he bring on some of that youth? You know, we talk about, does he promote the youth? Doesn't he? You see Emile Smith Rowe. You know, Saka's really the shining star of Hale End. Look what Pepper's done with players like Bob, or Klopp with Bradley. Well, you could also say, look what Arteta's done with Saka and stuff like that. But I don't understand why he wouldn't. Why wouldn't you? I thought he was more of a risk taker, but really he's more a George Graham than a Wenger. Plays it a lot safer, doesn't he, Paul? Do you think he plays it?
It's funny because he's aggressive in his actions and he's aggressive and emotional on the side, but it doesn't seem like that he's very patient with the performance within the 90 minutes. But again, I've always wondered that again with Pep, because you've got to look at when people work with a manager, they take stuff from them, right? This is what you do when you're working with somebody. You say, "Yeah, I'll take that. And maybe he's not giving himself the room to think how he wants to be in them moments. So maybe he just thinks, stick with it. This is why, and that's been drummed in. But I think it's a big part of the game. I think a huge part of the game in that moment to win it, you know, to really be proactive in it. I mean, it's one thing I always hated when I'd kick myself after the game and say, I should have changed it. Why didn't I change it? What was I waiting for? Why did I show so much faith in that player? You know, And I would sometimes rather do it knowing that I've been proactive and gone for it. And certainly if I go back into management, so if I feel I'd adopt that even more.
Yeah.
Cause,
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah. Yeah, because I find it fascinating how each manager manages a game and the thought process and the accountability, whether you make the changes or not. Um, and yeah, here's one for you from Football Galaxy. Many in the fan base, including myself, were optimistic of us reaching the semi-finals. Do you think that today's performance was a reality check, showing that we might not get too far in the Champions League?
I think it's. I'm not sure it's a reality check. I just think that you're in Champions League and there's no easy games.
Hmm.
This is knockout football now, right? So you're going to need to be at your best to come through now in a major competition. So
Hmm.
again, I think the acid test is the second one. That's the
Yeah.
one, isn't it?
Well, yes, and also to tap into what you're saying, Demsek says, Paul, knowing Porto will play the low block, what changes would you make to the midfield?
Okay.
What would you do?
Well, Arsenal are used to playing against it, so like it won't be something that's new to him. I think he'll just get them sharper, and I think being behind will make them sharper. I think they'll open them up at the Emirates. I really do.
I do too.
I think they will, and I think the crowd plays a big part in it, as well. I think that they'll be up for it, like I've already said. I think that's when you're behind, you know what you got to do. You're not in that middle ground like they probably was tonight, in that middle ground, thinking, maybe they were thinking, we can do this over two legs. Who knows what creeps into the players' minds? You can get a little bit complacent sometimes. Or maybe this was just due. Maybe law of averages, this was just coming, right?
Hmm.
We all saw it to be a draw. All of a sudden it's 1-0. It could be a blessing in disguise. I just think
Interesting.
that Arsenal are in really good scoring form, and they didn't score tonight, but they are. And I think if they shift it quicker, and I think Arteta will be saying that, because if any type of block, you've got to move the ball fast. If you move it quickly, the opposition against the ball, they're going to find it really difficult to keep moving. When that ball keeps moving so quickly, the gaps start to appear. Plus, you wear them down because they're having to move faster. So that maybe in the next one we'll see him do that, plus use the bench, and that might be too much for Porto.
From Chris, Paul's perspective is really good. Let's not pretend anything Arteta could have done would have changed this result. Bad luck. At the Etihad, it will be different. Oh, you're already heading to the Etihad, Chris. I like that. We talk about homework, and as a manager, you look at the opposition, and this is a good one from Lucas. So from Paul, I was impressed with Porto dealing with Arsenal's corners. How much work would Porto do focusing on Arsenal's set pieces? I thought they approached the game brilliantly, Paul. Credit to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you would do a load of work. I mean, you might tweak some stuff. Normally managers will have their way, they'll either be zonal and then have the post mark, and then some man marking, some zonal. Half and half is what I preferred. Take the zonal areas that are really important, that one, the near post position and the middle of the goal, and then everybody else man marking. The analysis guys would really be giving them every bit of data, every last bit. And obviously Arsenal have been fantastic offensively on set plays, with the way they've done things, with the coach they have. So they would have done a lot of work, because in these tight games, it can normally be a set play that's going to decide it.
And our set plays have been brilliant, Paul. And we were, Wise. Saka was taking corners tonight. Rice's delivery has been much better. I don't understand. Our set pieces that have been brilliant were really poor tonight. Really poor.
when you switch it up, I agree with you. Rice's delivery has been good. Even on them wide free kicks, he's been able to really put it in a great area. I don't know.
Here's a good one.
Sometimes.
Sorry, go on, Paul. Now finish your thought. Yeah.
Sometimes you'll change it based on the edge of the box, who you want on the edge of the box, whether they're good on a counter attack. You know what I mean? Sometimes you'll trade off. You'll say, okay, you're not taking the set plays because I need you in this position. This is more of an important area of the field than taking the set play.
Mm-hmm. How would you bounce back from a poor result midweek to an important game on Saturday versus Newcastle, Paul? From Gavin for you.
Probably show them the highlights of the last 22 games. To be honest, Gavin, yeah.
On loop.
Oh yeah, will it be on loop in the dressing room anyway? So like doing that. I would often show the players, the forwards, all the goals they got to music, you know, and then I'll do a whole.
What kind of music? Wagner? It's not Mozart, that's for sure.
I don't know, whatever my analysis guy used to choose. They'd say, "Gaffer, is this your music?" I said, "No, it's not." But this could be really inspirational. They could be really, really inspirational, and I think he'll do that. I think the players now at this time of the season really trust themselves. I don't think there's going to be a problem at the weekend. I really don't. The size of the game, where the Arsenal are, everything that's going on, they've absolutely took this at the start of the season. So I think there's so many positives he can take and give to the players between now and the weekend. And the players themselves will get together, you know, they'll get together. They know tonight was a tough one. Okay. They didn't have to go too much away from what they've been doing. They've been doing unbelievable. So I think it'll be really, really, in answer to your question, I think it'll be a positive environment he'll be creating as quick as he can after this game.
Yeah, he does. I agree with you. Jonathan, our cup competition since Arteta, I mean, of course he won the FA Cup, you know, half a season, Emery's team. People hate when I say that, but he still had to win it. Was an on fire Aubameyang. Actually, the only time Pepe, Lacazette and Aubameyang were probably playing really well together. And I think this is a really big test for Mikel. And I said on the show last week, these next few months are massive for him, you know, because always be closing. Are you going to be that neat, nice manager that competes versus crossing the line and winning? And so with that said, Aditya's question to you here, Paul, what does this performance mean for our rivals in the Premier League? If you're watching this game tonight, your old team Luton, I got so excited, Paul. They went 1-0 up and I got all like jazzy about it. And then, of course, in the second half, Liverpool show up and smash them 4-1.
Yeah. I think, you know, when it gets to this, when it gets really tight, right? You know, it's going to get that way now. You know, you're seeing Liverpool being able to do that, right? These teams, they know they've been here before. They can handle the pressure, right? This blip tonight is more of Arsenal just getting back on the horse again, right? They've done it. They've been dominant in the Premier League. I think it's just the mindset. It's like Manchester City against Brentford. It going so long without the goal. There's me sitting there thinking, come on. And Bex is like, no, you know. And then you see Haaland come up, and you're just like, you know, yeah, they got Haaland, we haven't. So I think there's a big trust in this. And Arsenal have done enough lately with hitting the back of the net that they'll trust they can do it. They can do it again. But this is where it really comes down to the mindset of the players and the manager. And you know, he's up against it, Mikel, with you know, Klopp and Pep. He's up against it with these two guys because they've been there.
Yeah, and that's the key. That's the thing. You see the experience matters, and it does come into play at certain parts of the season. And I've always said mental will be how this team will win or lose. The ability to win a trophy when the spotlight is shining on you the brightest, and it has been because everyone's been raving about us. Kind of we falter in Europe away from home again. But like Guna Kai says, the good thing about the Champions League is we have another game to correct it. Okay, we got a couple more questions here for Paul before we get you guys out. There was a follow-up question from Lucas, and I wanted, because you mentioned you answered his question. Paul, you said you would move players' position in a set piece. Is that to counter any threat the opposition have on a counter attack?
Yeah.
You just wanted to follow up with your answer.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I would look at all the dynamics of what that set play looks like, because the stats say you're not going to score the corner as a rule, but there's a lot of grass behind you that you're leaving, and if the team's got a bit of pace in 1, 2 or 3 areas, I would pay respect to that. I mean, look at my team, Brentford, conceding when they left 1-for-1 back against Liverpool. I mean, I completely disagree with that. I mean, love Thomas, but again, that for me, playing against top of the league and you're leaving 1v1 at the back was, that was a mismatch. So you really have got to be on it in every area when you've got a set play, and it's not until you've been undone, because so many times you're looking at it thinking, we've got a chance here, the crowd are up, and all of a sudden they clear it, and before you know it, there's a race or there's a 1v1 or the lads are switched off at the back. So them areas are important, and as a manager, you live and die by them decisions, as to how you set your team up. I used to like the edge of the box being, having good numbers on the edge, because sometimes it comes out and you've got that second phase to recycle the ball or get a strike on goal. But that is an important part of it.
Brilliant stuff from Paul Buckle. Absolutely. I love your football brain, and I love going into, and we're going to be doing a lot more of these with Paul, Ask the Gaffer, because, Kev takes us beyond the white lines as a player. And I also think, and I love it when Kev and Paul like on the same show and you're getting the manager perspective and the player perspective as well. But to get into the mind of the manager, especially tonight, because Mikel Arteta, he's starting to show his legs in the Premier League. But in Europe and in cup competitions, there definitely seems to be, I don't know what it is. Is it inexperience, Paul, or is it, what is it? Because, we got dumped out of the League Cup, dumped out of the FA Cup last season, the same thing, dumped out of Europe, didn't qualify for the Champions League. Is there that much of a difference when you're playing? At first, I thought we're more of a cup team under Wenger and Emery, and we had been more of a cup team under Wenger with those 4 FA Cups that kind of masked a lot of pain. And I felt like we didn't have the nous or the mental capacity to stay engaged for 38 games in the Premier League. In your summary here, what do you say? What kind of a night has it been for Mikel Arteta? Does he have to do better in the cup competitions? I'm going to say don't panic, but what's your assessment?
Well, reflection, go on any course, so right, you go on your pro license, reflection is massive, right? You don't have a lot of time to reflect with the games coming thick and fast. I would imagine, and this is, I'm talking from myself, the amount of times I've thought I should have gone for it. I should have just gone for it. And maybe he hasn't gone for it. Maybe he doesn't know how to tackle European football. He doesn't know how to behave in it. Maybe, and you can send that message through to the players, the way you speak, the way you behave, the way you're going. They can sense, players pick up on everything. They pick up, on whether you've totally confident in them, you've got a little edge to you. Maybe you're leaving 2 back when you normally leave 1 back. Maybe you're now messing with stuff from set plays, as we spoke about. I'm not saying it, I'm just speculating that this can go on. And then in the end, you're just overthinking it. You're just literally overthinking it. So you can play the same team. So, okay, we play the same team, but you might need to just up the ante even more. But if you're playing the same team, but you're sort of keeping them back a little bit, that can be a challenge for everybody. And I tell you what, the hardest thing, I think, is when you set up and you get into that slow mode, it's very difficult to break out of it. And lastly, I mean, I don't know if this might be for one of the gooners out there, is have a look between Klopp, Mikel and Pep and see who's made the most changes in the subs. You know what I mean? I'll tell you what, because Klopp seems to make a lot of changes.
He's not afraid to make changes.
No, he's not. He's not. And you'll see, if I can say it, you'll see the players pretty pissed off sometimes coming off, but that ain't a bad thing. That's not, I think he knows what he's doing there, and I think then they play with a bit of an edge because you're thinking no one's safe here, right? No, nobody's safe here. So yeah, they're good dynamics to look at, and hopefully it's going to good insight to the guys that have switched on here.
Okay, we'll get you out on this one. Do you fancy us against Newcastle this weekend? Do we bounce back and get back to our Premier League, goal smashing form? It's so funny. You and I should never talk on the phone again before an Arsenal game. Just saying.
I've got the message. Yeah, I won't text or nothing. So I've got every faith in Arsenal. I called it. I think they're going to win the league. I think they'll beat Newcastle. Because Newcastle will open the pitch up against them because they got to go for it as well. And Eddie Howe likes to open the pitch up and play. And I really think, and again, conversation of a couple of hours drive with Bex, and we don't often talk football a lot, but I was just thinking as well, and I think I shared this, that Arsenal had the balance right. So if Mikel goes for it again, which I'm sure he will, they've got a great balance now in the team. So I don't want the Arsenal fans to get too despondent from tonight. I think it's a great game to go back into.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty confident about the return leg with Porto. Of course, Newcastle's always a tough away day. They haven't been that great this season, but I'm sure they'll find their best form against us. Agree with you, Chief Like Officer Tammy Steels. Great show. Thanks to Paul. Lots of good comments coming in for Paul as well. And Demsec, I love this question, and we're going to do this type of stuff with Paul on another show because I'm fascinated about the mind of a manager, and Paul brings a lot to the table when it comes to not only kind of having stood on those white lines in the highest pressure moments, but also kind of being the voice of a consultant for clubs and managers, and how that translates as well into the football ecosystem too. So lots more to come from Paul here on the Highbury Squad. You can find him. Please follow him on Instagram. He's not on the Twitter sphere. As you know, I refuse to call it X. Buckle_Paul. And thanks so much for joining me again this evening, Paul. Some brilliant stuff. And, it's a disappointing night, but we shouldn't be drowning our sorrows in, vodka and beer, is what I'm saying. Absolutely not.
And as a closet gooner, I'm rooting for Arsenal. So we need to keep.
And I haven't told them that. I'm glad you told them that, because
if anyone that didn't know, and I'm expecting you to know, my first ever game was a 1979 FA Cup final, 3-2 against Manchester United, that my late father took me to. So that inspired me. So let's get behind Mikel, and it's going to be exciting running.
Wow, what a game you went to, by the way. Amazing. What a final. Alan Amazing. What a goal.
If only I could grow that Alan Sunderland.
Oh, what a match. Oh, I loved it. This is the new Soph calmness personified. Yeah, the new me. Lots happened in my life over the last 6 months, guys, so I'm chilling out a little bit. Good debrief, a great show. Cheers, Paul. Lots of love from you. Excellent show as always, says Wesbird. Yes, Paul, best wishes, great input. Take care, everyone. Tell the people you love them. Of course, that's Kev's message. All right, everyone, we will see you. I was going to be doing a show tomorrow, but I'm not sure if it's going to be on. But our next guest on the show will be US men's legend John Harkes, who is also just a really good, actually, you and Harksy on a show. He's been on a show with Rebecca before, and it was really great. So, yeah, our next show will be with John Harkes. Paul, look out for our next show with Paul. I'll let you guys know on our YouTube channel. Paul, thank you again for joining. And squaddies, don't lose your minds. It's only 1-0. And when we get them back to the Emirates, I'm sure we will do the business. Until then, love to Super Kev, and at ease, everyone. At ease.
Love Kev.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.
Thanks so much for joining, guys. I will see you again soon. Kind of don't want to go. Should I stay? Should I stay or should I go? Bum, 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 bum. Love you.